They Hold Back the Dark. By Redditor Traditional Wolf 007. I bobbed my head in the back of the van marked News Channel 7 to Don't Fear the Reaper as I loaded my magazines. I studied the expression on my staff sergeant's face. He wanted a cigarette. He was a pretty considerate guy, though, all things considered, and so he restrained himself. Lord bless him. I pushed around into the mag I was loading and it refused to go in fully, so I removed it and put the magazine in my LBV. I placed the round in the next empty mag. There was something immensely satisfying about loading a 7.62 by 51 round into a magazine in a tactile sort of way. Staff Sergeant tapped his booted foot on the van's floor. "Squad, you good on water? Canteens green or amber?" he asked. The question was a bit ridiculous for our situation. I could tell he was just talking to talk. I'd never seen him so nervous before. Dude used to be Delta Force. A chorus of green S echoed through the van. One of my squad mates, a hulking half-giant named Eric, completely ignored the question and continued to twist his K-bar knife in his hands. If we hit a pothole, I suspected it would become embedded in my leg, or worse. "Red, left them behind for weight and bulk," I said. I half expected him to chastise me for it, but his face betrayed no sign he'd even heard me. "You all read the op-ed?" "Yes," came the collective reply. "Mission is assault and hostage rescue," he said. "Despite this, adjacent forces are local law enforcement and guard units stationed in the capital region, including Capitol Police. We'll be supported by the rest of Delta Platoon. First Squad is going to be on security, Second and ourselves are going to be on assault by fire, Fourth Squad is support by fire. Enemy force is a reptilian Illuminati tactical team. They're expected to be a platoon to company-sized element." That explained why he seemed so nervous. Must have missed that in the op-ed. We may well have been screwed over. With First Squad on security, that left 2 squads to be doing the actual up-and personal engagement of the enemy and 1 to give covering fire. So we have probably 18 to 26 doing actual fighting in our number up against anywhere in between 40 and 200, although more likely on the lower end of that spectrum. We're to neutralize all hostiles, and secure and evacuate all hostage members of Congress. Should our cover be compromised, NCP jackets, LBVs, weapons, personal protection systems, and dog tags are to be discarded. If time permits, any identifying or sensitive articles are to be destroyed. Hooah! Tracking. Kill. Staff Sergeant let out a half-relieved sigh. "Seth, son, you done loading those mags?" "Yeah." The van fell quiet for a moment, with only the sounds of traffic outside and the vehicle's rumble to fill the silence. Our squad was down 4 after last mission's ordeal. There simply hadn't been time to replace the soldiers we lost. It left myself, Hirano, Sarge, Walker, a tarot card reader, Olsen, first name Eric, and Morris, completely normal dude, just got abducted by aliens 8 times. And that was considered legally anomalous enough to be conscripted after he committed tax fraud. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Sarge said. "We're going in there outnumbered. Probably outgunned, and on the offensive. Which goes against typical doctrine," Morris said. Staff Sarge nodded in an annoyed jerk. "There's a lot of shit here at play. Shit above my head. We're on the back foot here, not that that's anything new. And..." He shook his head and let the rest of his thought wither before it could meet the air. Something was wrong here, and he knew it, or at least suspected it. "What is it, Sarge?" I asked without thinking. I realized how scared I sounded, and how young. I cursed myself for sounding weak. "Nothing, kid. Valley in the shadow of death, remember?" Sarge said, trying to turn his grimace into a small smile. "Say them prayers." The soles of my boots rolled across the carpeted floor. I stood up on my toes, having discreetly carved joints into the thick soles of my boots so that I could walk digitigrade more comfortably. I do that when I'm nervous sometimes. "I can smell them," Suki said. I nodded, though I'm sure nobody noticed. I could too. The whole building smelled like the reptile section at the zoo. "Can you track them?" Staff Sarge asked. "No," she replied. "Sethson?" "Negative." The lights were off. Someone had cut the power. Both sides had access to NVGs, so I wasn't entirely sure what the point of that was, although I myself was not issued a pair. The silence was deafening and oppressive. I pushed the safety on my M14 forward and dimmed the illumination on my ACOG scope. My eyes swept back and forth through the wide hallway as we moved in a wedge formation, trying to suppress any sound my boots would make as I stepped from carpet to tile floor. We came into view of the congressional chambers and immediately sighted hostiles. There was a fire team of gray-uniformed reptilians standing outside the door. Sarge motioned for us to hold fire and to line up against the walls. He removed a hand from his rifle and drew a suppressed pistol from his belt. He held it out from his hip like a cowboy would in an old western. He was using the targeting system in his heads-up display. He fired off 4 shots and each found their marks with accuracy that should have been inhuman. The 22 rounds sounded like a pneumatic hammer more than gunshots. The reptilians dropped dead. Without missing a beat, he said, "Sethson, I want you in the upper balcony in an overwatch position. Don't shoot until we do or I tell you to. I have a sneaking suspicion that 4th Squad isn't going to be as inconspicuous as we were, so our support by fire might be delayed." He looked back at 2nd Squad and waved them forwards. Carefully, I crept up the stairs into the chamber. There was almost no light in the stairwell. The scent of reptiles intensified to noxious levels. I took step after step. I saw what I previously thought was a part of the wall shift its weight about 2 steps from me, nearly bumping into it. My heart skipped a beat and I suppressed a gasp. The Illuminati had had the same idea of posting a marksman on the balcony as Sarge did. The figure started to turn around. I didn't even think. Not really. I grabbed a hold of the reptilian, clamping my hand around its mouth and bit. It struggled and let out a muffled scream. I tore with all the might I could muster. My fangs ripped through the neck of the Illuminati soldier, across thin scales and through cold blood. I spat out a chunk of flesh that once belonged to a thinking being as the body slumped to the floor. I fell to my knees, tears in my eyes, and retched. Vomit threatened to break through the back of my mouth. "Forgive me, O Lord, for I have trespassed," I prayed. "Hallowed be thy name. Kingdom come. Will done." I couldn't form a complete thought. I had defiled myself. I felt profoundly unclean. The G28 rifle the marksman had been holding clattered to the floor. I'd kicked it off the body by accident in my moment of breakdown. "All right up there?" a voice demanded from the headset the marksman was wearing. I swallowed nervously. "Respond," came the voice again. I crept up to the railing on all fours, cradling my rifle in my elbows. Just then, gunfire sounded from the antechamber outside the hall on its opposite end. That was 4th Squad. I peeked over the side of the railing. There was a platoon-sized element down there. There were men and women in formal clothing bound and gagged. I recognized some of them from TV. They were the hostage Congress members. They'd turned to face the opposite end of the chamber. One of them was making hand gestures, and others were obeying them. "Hello, Lieutenant," I thought, resting my rifle on the railing and placing my reticle on the head of the reptilian in charge. "Sarge, I got a shot on their commander," I whispered through my radio headset. "Give me 5 seconds," he replied. "Roger," I counted off. I took a breath in and released it, emptying my lungs. At the bottom of my breath I squeezed the trigger. There was a spray of blood, and before the officer hit the ground, I heard the doors of the chamber slamming open below me. 5.56 rounds began tearing through the air. M4s, M16s, and FN SCAR LS from our side and G36 from theirs. 4th Squad burst in through the other end of the chamber and began laying down heavy suppressive fire. The deafening report of twin M249s echoed through the chamber. It had to be some kind of sin to tear up a building this old with gunfire, but I'd heard it mentioned that similar incidents had occurred before and that no one was much the wiser. Government shutdowns gave time to repair after such incidents. Some of the hostages let out muffled screams of terror. These tactics may not have been ideal for the situation, but hostage rescue was not our unit's specialty. I splattered a few more lizards' brains on the walls. Our assaulting element reached the enemy, beat the ever-living crap out of them, and called clear. I turned around slowly and sat on the floor, leaning my back against the balcony. I heard aid and litter clearing the hostages out of the area, and our EPW team checking that all the hostiles had passed from this world. I felt the blood drying on my face. I stared up at moonlight pouring in through bullet holes in the ceiling. Must have been some freak stray shots. Morris had taken a bullet to the gut. Olsen was dead. Walker was dead. Sarge had been stabbed, but didn't seem to mind much. Second had a single survivor. Fourth squad took 4 casualties. First squad had made contact with a few hostiles attempting to flee and took them prisoner. "Why's your face all blue?" Suki asked me, as we sat in the van on the way back. "It's blood," I replied flatly. I stared out the front window of the van into the hazy light of the street. I couldn't shake the feeling we hadn't been meant to make it out of there.